I'm back in JS and even though I said we would use the CLI from now on, we will, but this simple introduction to components is best done here, or it's very easy done here, as this is the environment we saw before, and as it will also be very little code I want to show here, but the code I do show is very important. Consider this application. We got a normal view instance where we select a certain place in the DOM with the app selector, but then we override it with our own template down there, where I basically say service status, and then I use the status in my data property here. That's a normal view instance, nothing componentish about that. Now, let's say we wanted to place this service status in various places here in the app. As I showed you in the last module, that's not that easy to do. If I repeat my app here, besides that it's not valid HTML to have multiple IDs, you will also see it's only printed once, and that is not because I'm using ID here. If I were to use class here and change this to .app to selected by class, you still see it's only getting used once. The second usage down there is getting omitted. That is because we're creating a view instance here, and with that instance we will only select the first element, so this div here, this div up here. Now we want to repeat this in our application because we got multiple places where we do want to use it. That's actually easy to do. I'll restructure it, rename this back to ID, and then I'll get rid of the second instance, but now I want to indeed use a component, which means I want to create a reusable piece of not only template, but of our view instance. A component basically extends the view instance, and we can create a new component by using the view object and then running the component method on that. Behind the scenes, this will give us a new instance kind of, but with some extra features. Now the first argument in view component is the tag name which you want to use to enter our component. You can think of a component as our own HTML element we're creating. So here I will set up component to use, let's say, my component like this. This will allow me to enter my component in the code like this. So creating or using my own HTML element which I'm creating with that. Therefore, make sure to not use an existing one. Also make sure to add a prefix to make your component unique so that you don't interfere with any third-party packages you might use or existing or possibly future HTML elements, because you certainly don't want to override them. So maybe use your company name as a prefix, or at least something like app or my. So this is the selector by which we're able to use this. The second argument is the actual object which represents our component. And this is generally the same object as the object we're passing here to our view instance. Therefore, I can copy data and template to this object here to use that. And I will change this to hashtag so that we again select this part in the DOM. But this will not work as intended. The reason for this is the data object in the component. A component basically extends the view instance, and therefore if we set up data like this, we kind of interfere with the other data properties, the other data objects. Hence, Vue.js will actually give us an error if data is an object. It's fine, or it's normal to use it as an object in our root view instance, but in any component, this shall actually be a function where we then return a new object holding the data. So this data object we used before is now basically returned in a function. So by wrapping it in a function, we make sure we're not interfering with our data. So with this setup, if I now hit Control Enter, we see the service status critical here, and we see that our component is now used successfully. So we're now able to output it, because we can now also repeat it if we would have it in multiple places like this. And that is what makes components so cool. You have your contained view instance, your contained code. Of course, there you could also have methods, computed, all the things you already learned about, which is why I taught them first. But now you have it contained in this component, which you can enter as often as you want into your template here, into your code to reuse it. And that gives you a very powerful tool to build your web pages.